Benjamin Irish here. Welcome to the podcast. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons at the bottom of the screen. That helps our channel to grow, and we'd greatly appreciate it. Brief disclaimer before we start today's episode. I am not an attorney. I am a legal advocate specializing in constitutional rights. No information herein should be construed as legal advice. It is purely educational and historical.
We got to put it out for the people to see because the people have a right to know.
Benjamin Irish. Love him or hate him, he has had an effect on a major American company.
I have a lot of disdain for the total lack of accountability, irresponsibility, and corruption.
Mr. Irish is back again with a precedent-setting case.
$100 million lawsuit.
Benjamin Irish. He was a signatory to the unity agreement between the United States and the Dominican Republic.
There are apparent authority laws in this country. You know, if you work for a company and you go out in the company car and you hit and you kill somebody on the way home, the company is reasonably responsible for your actions.
And you seem fearless in your pursuit of giving those that don't have a voice a voice.
Now, are all these incidents connected? You have one chemical agent that's killing all these people.
Right.
Well, what is it? Who's doing this? I'm sick of all this garbage, removing the words "in God we trust" from the oath of the United States Congress. Give me a break.
Why do you have politicians that need to raise $5 million, $6 million, $10 million for positions that pay $60,000 a year? Corruption is the real pandemic. Large portions of our court system have fallen apart, but large portions are still operating.
The case you've been allowed to represent for, which is sort of unprecedented, isn't it?
These women had a right to receive that. They did this to these people while the trial was going on. This is just an old world organized crime smash and grab. It's against hardworking, decent people. These people were healthcare workers. These people were seamstresses. These people were put into the freezing cold New York streets. You know, we've exposed these people. They're before the federal court. There was a DEA investigation. There were arrests. Yeah, we're going to get these guys, and they deserve it too.
We are a free country. We are a free people, and they want Americans afraid. Well, we can't be intimidated, and we can't be afraid, and we need to stand up and fight this evil.
I can't believe this stuff is even an issue still. In this day and age, who's a leader of the people? I don't want to hear about who's a leader of black people and who's a leader of white people. I just want to hear about who the leader of the people is. The people in general, because we're all in this together.
I'm so proud of every single person, the thousands of people that came here tonight, everybody who came out here tonight to show their support to bring the principles back to the United States of America. Thank you for coming here tonight. USA! 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 USA!
Today we'll talk about evictions and how they become federal lawsuits when civil rights crimes occur as their basis against the tenant, when people don't serve warrants, don't serve process, the process in the courts, and more. So stay tuned. Benjamin Irish, there is none other. Tell your mother, tell your brother, tell your sister, tell your lover, coming to you live and direct from the center of the universe to the middle of your living room. The city so nice they had to name it twice. New York, New York, but sometimes New York is not so nice, and evictions are inextricably intertwined with constitutional rights. The Supreme Court has held this because of the matters of property. In other words, all the stuff inside the apartment or house. So this is a hot topic right now, and something I get asked a lot about is evictions. Before and during COVID, the moratorium on evictions, and evictions in general. Now, I get asked about this most especially after my appearances on radio shows and in news articles. I get asked frequently about the federal lawsuit I advocated for, born out of the Bronx. That's the New York Southern District Federal Court. And yes, the Bronx is a tough place. As Roddy Piper said, I fought dudes in the Bronx with hair on their teeth. Let me tell you. Unlawful. I don't like the word illegal because, folks, unlawful goes to intent and frame of mind, and it's more than illegal when the landlord evicts you without suing you. You could sign a piece of paper that says they can evict you for various reasons, but the eviction process means they have to go through the process in the courts to have you ordered removed from a judge. In this case, in the Bronx, they did not let the court finish its proceedings and just went in with their henchmen and took everything, even money and passports from inside the apartment in what's called a smash and grab. Now, what makes this a constitutional rights deprivation and rises it to the level of a federal question inquiry? Well, first, they're matters of life, liberty, and property. That's number one, folks. And I'm talking to attorneys and advocates and anybody else who stands up for people unlawfully evicted. Expect clients who are engaged with their case like nothing you have ever seen before. These cases cause all sorts of issues with their victims: mental illness, paranoia, hoarding. Let's put this into perspective. I was having a talk the other day with a judicial official in a major U.S. city, and she said to me, you know, man, these evictees, that's the people who've lost their apartments. And in this conversation's context, we were talking about losing their apartments unlawfully. And she said they just keep coming back to court every single day. It's like they never stop for years and years and years. They come back. And I told her, I said, what do you expect? This is their whole entire world. It's everything to them. They lost everything. It's all they ever owned, their family heirlooms, their entire life. In many cases, the family gets broken up. Mom and daughter need to go live in different places, sleep on couches. They relive this every moment of every day. And this is a real serious issue and causing a lot more social ills that flood the state courts with problematic and burdensome litigation. And that could be an even more encompassing civil rights question, but we could leave that one for the class action lawsuits because this is about the individual. It may be even that you're watching or listening to this because you're in a similar battle yourself. And folks, I told Winfred Adams on her radio show that the state programs for this, the welfare programs to help pay these rent arrears, they're depleted. They're out of money. So state judges, you can't let the clearing of these dockets en masse continue unless you want to build shelters atop of these courts. And look, this is happening too. State courts are clearing their dockets in truly substandard fashion because these cases are so burdensome and so many. But let's not digress from the constitutional questions, as the judges in the district courts would say. All I'll say is that if we're going to help our brothers and sisters who cannot fight for themselves, if you know of somebody who's been kicked out on the street without their due process under law, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat or if you're a purple people eater with 3 eyes from the planet Zork that came here on a spaceship, you give me a call. And we'll work together and make sure that the perpetrators of these deprivations get what they deserve, get slapped in cuffs, because 2 wrongs that don't make a right. You see what I mean? Anyway, this type of stuff, this gangsterism and destroying people's lives and using the courts and the government to do it causes all sorts of issues with the poor people they do this shit to. They lose all faith in the government, and they also stop trusting the law and the police and the justice system. They lose faith in the justice system. And let me tell you that loss of faith is the greatest burden these courts are facing, bar none. In doing so, in the case I crossed the bar for on behalf of the victims to fight these gangster landlords, the landlords they did something that actually happens quite often, is they conspired with a state actor, actually multiple state actors. It could have also been a sheriff, and that means a federal constitutional question with either. And the reason is you need a state actor or multiple state actors, such as a cop or somebody employed by the state, or maybe it's a city sanitation supervisor who took a payoff, preferably but not exclusively with a badge, to have a constitutional rights violation claim. Now, here's where it gets liquidifiable in the right to bring a lawsuit to federal court for an eviction or some other charge under civil rights. You know, unless I put you to sleep, wake up. They're about to throw dirt on you, man. You know that a state actor needs to be involved to file a civil rights case. Keyword here is involved, because involved means directly or indirectly in its inception. So say you're getting sued for eviction in the Bronx court, like this family I advocated for was, and it turns out that the entire eviction was really part of something else bigger, like this one was, and involved fraud and organized crime and doing business with the city to manage rent-stabilized apartments for people who are living there by social welfare programs. And really, there was never an intention to keep the people they rented the apartment to there in more than a transient basis. So taxpayers float the bill for the rent subsidy. The scope of the state program is to give indigent residents long-term housing, but the landlords are evicting the majority of residents every 2 or 3 years and refuse to accept payments from state welfare agencies for the rent arrears, the agencies they contracted with to get the payola from, the rent subsidies, the subsidies for gas or for heat, etc., etc., etc. These are deprivations of these people's rights to state programs. They are detrimental to constitutional rights to use these programs in that fashion. So you can only enhance, not deprive, constitutional rights. So you can only make one's constitutional rights greater. You can't lessen them. That's against the law. Now, this is entering into a contract with the state for a false reason, an ulterior motive and purpose, to get you leased up on the apartment. And they use these acts of unclean hands. This is a corrupt act of emptiness and nonsense to get money. They use this as a basis to engage with you to get you to sign the lease or enter into agreements. Jot this down. Get the legal pad. The acts of unclean hands. That's a dispositive doctrine. The actor acts of unclean hands is a doctrine that proffers a party did very naughty things that were improper in the inception of business with the party they're in court with, and it's really two wrongs don't make a right. And it's truly similar to the Son of Sam law. Remember the guy whose dog told him to kill people and he tried to write books and everything about his crimes? Well, the courts ruled that would be profiting from his crime, and unclean hands is very similar. Son of Sam. He was a state actor. He worked for the post office. Let's face it, people go through hell in cities like this to obtain security and assurances from the government that they have enforceable rights to live on a long-term basis in their homes. And now the landlords are using the state courts as a sanctioning body for their illicit business practices. And here you're caught in the middle. They're paying off marshals. That's right, they pay fees for the marshals to go into the home and take notes of everything inside the apartment and then physically remove everything. And far too often, and I get the calls from victims all the time, they do this without valid warrants. They edit court and marshals' databases and records and files. And folks, there are collateral consequences for this of a phenomenal nature. Just look at all the tent cities popping up in this country, all the people living in their cars, and think of the mental illness this causes. And where does it go? It goes right back into the courts, who have to deal with the victims and what comes from their applications of law in decision. So here's the co-opting of multiple state actors as something called a stalking horse to justice. That's when a litigant, a plaintiff, a planted witness, and in some cases prosecutors, bring cases to court to make the justice system an unwitting third party to an abusive process means They don't know. They are unaware, or as policemen say, that they're being used to sanction a violation of due process or some other legal right against you. They're being made into a stalking horse against justice to secure the rights violation that's being put upon you and to make sure it has its desired effect on you. An example, using the state actor as a third party, say using a judge to say, yeah, Mr. So-and-so had a valid legal right to break the contract or the lease. Well, that is a due process deprivation, everybody. That is a violation of your rights. Behold, the pale white stalking horse. Visual marker. Imagine a pale white horse with a cloak and a dagger behind a tree salivating, licking his lips at a woman it's about to slaughter to manipulate a legal, rightful process against for-profit. No, it's not Joe Biden on the campaign trail. It's the stalking horse to justice. Check out the link in the comments section. And this may require a whole episode, the Memo of Law in State of New York versus Sergei Alyanakov. I hope I said his name right. Now, if you were before, say, a law professor or even a judge at a hearing, and they said, tell me a little bit more about this case, how would you color the constitutional rights question in an eviction case? Here's how you do it. You cite the co-opting or even the direct conspiracy with state actors to do something that goes against your rights and abusing the legal process and enforcing warrants that aren't valid, judgments that aren't valid. These are tremendous violations. In this matter in the Bronx, we caught a state attorney from the same Supreme State Court, who's a landlord's daughter, in court advising the attorneys how to engineer the case. So this is more complicated than the usual eviction. Just listen to this. This appears at footnote 3 of a letter motion filed in the federal court by the plaintiffs, the evictees, in this matter. Letter motions are very important pro se documents. Judges invariably read them through and through because they really speak from the heart of the pro se, and they aid judges in sua sponte decision making, which is a very important part of the legal process for those who are unrepresented. Here it goes at footnote 3. This is about the two state actors, one a New York marshal and the other a New York state attorney. Footnote 3 reads, defendant New York Marshal Thomas J. Bia, badge number 9, is confirmed as a state actor. So is Doria Theodora Kritsolas, discovered to be an employee of the New York State Supreme Court. This is a state attorney. Thus far, this state actor has refused to comply with constitutional rights audit requests by New York State citizens regarding her work with the Marshal Bia. Her name is listed on websites associated with the court as Theodora Kritsolas Wood, and her voicemail message at the court lists her as Doria Wood. She represents herself as an employee of Defendant 217 LLC as Doria Kritsolas and is a plaintiff in the bizarre matter of Kostas and Theodora Kritsolas versus Peter and Edna Kritsolas. Get this, where she and her brother sued their parents. One a defendant here, you can't make this stuff up. The New York State Supreme Court case reveals her employment and partnership with 217 and bases its causes of action on wage deprivations and other workplace rights violations. She said her father, the landlord, didn't properly pay her for working there, where she wasn't even supposed to be working in the first place, for employment performed by Ms. Kritsolas for defendant here, Peter Kritsolas, at 217, through her work in their office at the location the plaintiffs here were unlawfully evicted from. It also reveals her employment and financial interest in the address defendant here, Angel Romero Matias, a.k.a. Angel Zepeda, was charged by the DEA for operating a methamphetamine laboratory within 1,000 feet of 2 elementary schools and a daycare center. Nice guy. Saving her proven judicial knowledge concerning deprivations of civil rights law, Ms. Kritsolas additionally represented a New York Police Department employee in private practice in the high-profile 42 U.S.C. 1983 matter of Baker versus Police Officer Fury, rendering partially, but by no means fully, her involvement representing the other defendants in the civil eviction proceedings against the plaintiffs here while employed by the state of New York as a state attorney, a felony crime. Ms. Kritsolis was never appointed to the matter here, litigated by her family and the company she's a partner in by any state authority, and could never have been. This is a gross dereliction of her sworn duty. Ms. Kritsolis has been an attorney for New York State since 2 years prior to the commencement of this case. Furthermore, Ms. Kritsolis is still employed by the state court and represents on her social media pages that her relative, a young man also named Peter Kritsolis, is an employee inside the Bronx District Attorney's office. Calls to the New York State Bar Association reveal that Mr. Kritsolis is a licensed attorney, but has not been sworn in by New York State as a state attorney, despite his current employment there. A legitimate question of his motive to work there. There's a lot going on here, as you can see. Obviously, these people have infiltrated and helped to further corrupt this court in a way that is just phenomenal. I mean, you'd think that these people would realize they're going to get caught eventually, but I think that's also part of the criminal frame of mind, is that they feel like, well, you know what, we're criminals, we don't care, and nothing's going to happen to us. Who knows? You have frame of mind. You have people who have established judicial knowledge. They know what they're doing is wrong. This is a state attorney. Actually, it's 2 state attorneys from the family. What is a rights violation? In more basic cases, maybe your clients or even your own, a rights violation can be more subtly applied, but the ends are of the same means. It's a deprivation by taking your property, and rights violations in case you're a good soul who's unfamiliar with analogies to intimidation. Rights violations that are subtly applied, like intimidation tactics that are done by the person doing them with a smile on their face, they're still intimidation. These are still violations of your rights, so look for the anomalies. Good heads up is to see if the landlords use the same lawyers on all their evictions. See if the notary signatures match. Read the case summaries and see if they've been altered. This happens, people. Authority always predicates corruption. People who get special access via power always use it. Dr. King forewarned us of this. And remember, the engineers of these quiet deprivations, they are no different than a used car salesman, folks. They tell you they sued you to, quote, resolve an issue, unquote. If I have to tell you that the lawyer who sued you is not your friend and their client who sued you doesn't have your best interests in mind, if I have to tell you that, then you have a lot more serious issue, a more serious problem than losing your apartment. In closing, that's how you color constitutional rights violations claims in the spectrum of evictions. Now, we're seeing this happen more and more. A lot of these evictions have elements that give standing for removal to the federal court. If you or somebody you know has been unlawfully evicted, and you can show it and you can bring the evidence, get in touch with me. Doesn't matter if you're white, black, purple, green, blue, yellow, Republican, Democrat. None of that matters, because this is such a serious issue right now. People are losing their homes. They're losing everything they have. And this is one of the quiet crimes. Unlawful evictions are one of the quiet crimes that are hurting the soul of this country. So get in touch with me. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can bring justice to these matters. And I wish you the best of luck, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe, and you'll receive notifications on upcoming episodes. And make a comment. Whether you like us or you don't like us, make the comment. Not whether they love you or they hate you, but they talk about you. Benjamin Irish here. In these hard times, unfortunately, our four-legged friends are often forgotten about. Please make it a point every single holiday to donate 20 pounds or more of animal food to your local animal shelter. These guys would ask you for it, but they don't have words. Isn't that right, Zoe? Isn't that right, Zeus? You guys are ready for your walk? Can I get kissy wishy, mommy? Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. You're going to give me... Oh, you gave me a kissy too. Mwah. Love you guys. Aww. Please, donate 20 pounds of animal food to your local shelter every single holiday. Let's go for a walk, guys. Let's go for a walkie walk. Let's go for a walkie walk. Waste. Hey, you guys did so good.